Hey everyone, welcome back to What They Can't See. My name is Paige and I'm here with my co-host Mike. We're so excited for you to hear our epic flow of a conversation today about living with chronic conditions. We talk about our mindset, the seasons of life that we have, trusting the process, and everything in between. If you like this podcast, if you've gotten something from it, please feel free to like, subscribe, share with someone who you think might benefit from it, and we really hope you enjoy our conversation. We can't wait for you to be a part of it. I had a couple days where, and again, very classic situation, right? We're talking like the new year's starting. I'm feeling pretty good. Michael and I decided to find a new gym to join because the one that we were at just wasn't really doing it. Like I wanted more options. But with that, I got super excited. I took a couple classes and then it really hurt me for the past 2 days. So lots of auras, lots of side effects. And we're just talking, I mean, I took the smallest amount of weight possible, took one class. The next day I ran a half mile at 4.5 miles per hour, like super slow. And then I was like held up in bed for like 2 days. And so I think a bigger picture to that is that we're learning as we go and understanding our bodies. My body wasn't always like this, right? Like it wasn't always reacting to exercise this way, but there's this um, patience that's required and reflection that's required to understand where am I at right now and how can I move forward in understanding my body, being compassionate towards myself, and knowing where to start. And does that make sense? It was kind of just this moment of like, I could sit here and feel sorry for myself. I could do that. I'm not going to do that. So I chose not to this time. I'm not saying that if you do choose to feel sorry for yourself, that that's wrong, because we all have those days, or especially when we're starting out, we have that time. But I said, no, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself in this moment. I'm just going to recognize you overdid it again. You got super excited, and this is the repercussion of it. So that was something that happened this week.
Can I
Also,
ask
I've
a
been,
clarifying question?
yes,
So, in knowing you and in knowing the situation that you're in, that to me sounds like progress because when we had talked fall going into winter, like you were going on walks and like that was a lot. And now you just ran a half mile and went and did gym classes.
yeah. And 3 days later, I was okay. Whereas in like, I mean, I was obviously not. I had to like reschedule some things, right? I had to be flexible, but I also, yeah, I did make progress. Just in terms of the last time I took an exercise class, 3 days later, I had the worst seizure of my life. So
Hmm.
it was definitely progress.
So, where do you think that the mindset or thought process that you have now has changed? And I'll
I
I'll I'll
love,
like
I love this topic.
well, because I think, and this is just strictly coming from curiosity, like it sounds like you're kind of like, well, like it was good, but like I was like bedridden for a couple days. But then for me as an outsider, I'm like, girl, you just ran a half mile. Doesn't matter what pace, but like you ran a half mile. You also joined a gym and like did workout classes at the gym. And like, yeah, you used lighter weight, but you still used weight. So like, I guess I'm trying to understand like where is the mentality coming from? Because a couple of months ago you were like, yeah, I can only take my dog on a walk, and like that's it.
Yes. I agree. I agree. And it seems like everybody around me recognizes progress a lot easier than I do. with myself. However, okay, I think there's this new mentality shift that's positive. Like, I didn't see it as negative. I didn't judge that as negative. I was a little disappointed because I would love to just be able to fit right back into the shoes of when I was in peak performance and able to do anything and be super strong. Um, and this doesn't mean that I wasn't strong, just being able to like get in there and crush it, right? And lift the heaviest weights and all that kind of stuff. I think what's happening is a big mindset reset for me of I can choose to move into a negative territory with my thinking, right? I can choose to say to be confused, to be upset, to be frustrated, to be and let that consume me, right? I can choose that. I can also choose to respond with compassion and humility and confidence and love for myself. Like there is that ability to choose, in my opinion. And it doesn't always feel like we have that choice. So it's only through experience that we realize, oh, I can actually choose that route and say, hey, here's a pattern. This is the third time this has happened. You push yourself a little bit too much. How can I now readjust my plan and approach so that next week when I go to the gym, I don't necessarily have to start over. I just have a different plan and I know what's actually going to be successful. And we only learn by going through it. Does that make sense?
100%. I'm also curious. You used the word disappointment, right? Like
Yeah.
disappointment in yourself.
Yeah. And
And
I would easily go there, Mikey. Like I would easily in the past let myself go to you're not capable, you're not able-bodied enough, right? Those things. You're not good enough to do this. This was not my entire life, but over the past couple years this has been prominent. So now it's choosing, consciously choosing to say, no, I am capable, I am good enough as a person with a chronic condition, I have to do it the way that my body's going to accept it and help me move forward and gain more strength and gain more, right? Like whatever the goal is, I just have to choose the way that's going to work best for me. Doesn't mean I can't get there, right? I'm thinking about the book I'm writing. Just because I have a condition doesn't mean I can't write a book. I just have to do it my own way. And it's only going to be that much better because of it, because it's more relatable to the person that's reading it and understanding the chapter that I just wrote was 2 days ago. It was coming to you on a bad day. Like, I promised myself I'd work on this book every single day, and there was a really bad day. I couldn't not show up. I just had to do it my way. I was on the couch using a voice memo. Here's the chapter, right? Like, here's the hey, it's P coming to you on a bad day, a hard day. It is what it is. Let's accept that.
this is a total side note, but it when you say, "Hey, it's P and I'm having a bad day," you still sound like the most chipper, like excited Paige ever. Like most people are like, "Oh, like I'm having a bad day." P's like, "Hey, like coming from me from a bad day, but like here I am, still showing up." Like I love that. I think that speaks to your character, so I can appreciate that. Um, but I
Ah,
think it's go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, please go.
No, I just find it so interesting because I think I fall into this trap as well that when we objectively look at things, like I'm objectively looking at your life right now, and I'm like, okay, Paige had a surgery where they put in a device in November, right? And it's been not even 2 months, right?
Two
And you
months
are
today. Yeah.
2 months today, okay? And you are back in the gym writing a book, sitting here doing this podcast, went through the holidays, and you're like chipper. And you're like, yeah, like I had 2 days that were like meh after the gym. Well, hey, maybe because it's been a while since you've exerted that much energy and like, yeah, you're tired. Right?
Yeah.
Like I just find it so interesting that me, right? Again, I'm objectively looking at it and you're like, yeah, like I'm a little disappointed because I had a couple days that were like, meh, I was kind of bedridden. I'm out here like, damn, Paige, like you go get it, girl. It's
O-
interesting. I
Okay,
I
I
think it's
have to
interesting.
I have to interject
Yeah, go
because
ahead. Also, we never even really started the podcast. Like we
no,
did.
it's okay. This is we'll do the intro at the end again. But Paige, I have to say it's, you know, in the reality of things, it's not always like this. Like you
Yes.
said, 2 months ago, it wasn't this way. So for you, why do you think that that changes? Or when you're in that lack mindset, where does that come from versus where this comes from?
Good question, Freddie.
That's a great question. So I'll start with this specific mindset that's going on right now and also address, yeah, this isn't always reality for 100%. Our listeners need to know this. Like reflect on I actually encourage our listeners to reflect on the last time you did have a hard day. You know, what was your vibe, your mentality, your approach to your day, right? And then I'm going to go back to what Mike said about how he's standing here admiring the way that I handled this day. I admire it too this time around. I want to acknowledge that I think I did a really great job in harnessing what I could control, right? I was not 100% the entire time thinking this is chipper and good. That's not, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I was chipper all day, right? Because there were things that I wanted to get done. There were things that I wanted to engage in. I decided not to drive, right? There are all those things that happened. So I, I don't want to, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that that was perfect and I did awesome. However, I found that if I could accomplish one thing today and set my standard at, hey, you know you overdid it. You're able to identify the components that really contributed to this, right? Those were the components. The gym, probably staying up for New Year's, right? Things like that contributed to this overstimulation and therefore these auras that are just not going away. And I'm stuck in that energy for a little bit. If I could just do one thing today and call it something productive, something good, something that I contributed to my world, the world of other people, then I can call it a win. So that was the mentality that I had this time around that I think really helped me in saying, I don't have to be perfect today. I don't have to be at my 100%. But if I could even give one thing today, I can hold my head high with it. So for me, I said, I'm going to write an authentic chapter of this book. And by chapter, I mean like 3 pages worth, right? Like it's not anything big. It's just an authentic reflection. So I did voice to text memo. Hey, it's P coming to you on a rough day. Here's what this is like really looks like. I'm sure that you've experienced this too. You might even be experiencing it today, which is why you're deciding to read this chapter today, right? So I was able to just be very authentic because it isn't until I'm in that energy that I realize how much it sucks and how much this is holding me back from being the human I want to be every day. How can I still create goodness or do just one thing? Reminding myself that this is just one part of who I am. I don't need to be defined by today. Does that make sense? Like these components, and just it was such a great reminder for me too. So it doesn't happen every day, but I did allow myself some time to say, Paige, why don't you just set one goal for today? And for everyone listening, we can reflect on what would be one thing that on a what we call a bad day, maybe a hard day, a tough day. What would be one thing that you could do and say, you know what, I did that. Um, It could be a conversation, and Mike, jump in. Like, could be a conversation that you have with a family member or a friend. It could be that you decided to allow yourself to rest in peace, like rest, and not judge yourself for that rest. It could be that you decided to catch up on a book you love instead of expecting yourself to work. I don't know, Mike, if you have any other examples.
Yeah, I do an activity with a lot of my clients, and I learned this from a mentor one time, and it's similar to what you're talking about, Paige, where sometimes you feel like you just can't get out of your own head, where you're kind of just stuck spinning your wheels in the mud, not having a great day, and you just can't figure out why. You can't really pinpoint it. Maybe you're over analyzing what's going on and picking apart your entire day or your entire week and trying to pinpoint exactly what it was that either set you off or led you to how you're feeling. And the exercise is just a free write where you just get a piece of paper or get on your computer and just let it flow. Like literally anything that's coming to mind, just get it on that piece of paper. And then whenever you feel like it's done, or whenever you feel like you've accomplished something by writing it down, you have a choice. You could light it on fire. You can throw it out in the trash. You could put it in a shredder. You could rip it up yourself. And it's your choice. However you want to do it, however you feel would be beneficial to you. And with the destroying, so to speak, of the paper or of the document that you wrote on, those are your thoughts. Like they're gone, they're away. And for me, when I've done that, I have felt such a kind of like hard reset of, all right, I got all these feelings out. I got all of my thoughts out in a jumbled, probably disorganized mess. But then if I read it back and then destroy it, I can at least feel good about like, all right, those thoughts are gone. What are my new thoughts? And then I take some time to reflect on, all right, how would I rather feel? How would I rather shift my mindset? And it sounds like, Paige, it's similar to what you did. You took a day that you weren't feeling your best, found one productive thing, which was writing it down, or in your case, voice to texting it out. You felt productive, you got it down on a piece of paper, and that sounds like it kind of reshifted your mindset into, all right, like we're back. We're back. We got it all out. So that's just something that I thought about when you were explaining that because it's so easy for us when we are having those really bad days to not be sure what to do, be stuck in it for a while. That's just an exercise that some people can try.
I think that's a great thing to reflect on as a listener and as myself too, of just what can I control today? And if that means that our thoughts are what needs to get down on paper in order to get out of our head, like you're saying, because you're right. I think that's a huge point, Mike. Like we get stuck in our own heads of what does this mean? We think ahead, so we get anxious. We think about the past, so we get depressed, right? There's like this, but we're not actually truly being right here. Um, but being right here can be so hard and painful too when you're experiencing the symptoms. Like I was having auras, meaning like tingling sensation in my lips every single time I closed my eyes. And so it was like, don't take a nap. Also, don't do that, right? Like there was so much electrical activity going on that it just wasn't stopping. Um, so I think your point and to our listeners, it's such a great tool to implement. Like if you're in your head today, write it all out, baby. Write it out.
Fred, do you feel like that answered your question? And if not, can you repeat it again? Because I totally forgot the question.
No, I did because what I was getting at was that right now you're living in reality, not anxiety. You're being present. And I think that's what I was going for was right now you're present. In the past, you were in fear, and I think it would help if you explained, 2 months ago what you were going through leading up to this surgery and the fear of what that was, because listeners don't necessarily even know about your surgery.
True. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. I have one more thing to add.
Perfect.
I think sometimes we get caught up. I get caught up. I'll speak for myself. I get caught up in this black or white thinking. It's what we call polarized thinking, black and white. It's either all good or all bad, all positive, all negative. And we don't allow ourselves to believe that there's an in between, which is most of the time where things exist, is it's not all or nothing. So as an example, we might think I have to be completely healthy and good and no epilepsy symptoms. Mike, no symptoms for you. And if I have any symptoms, I've failed. Everything's bad. I'm not good enough, right? And really there is that in between piece of, well, I can have some symptoms. I could even have a seizure. And I know that that's a big thing to say, especially for me, because they're really intense. And I could have this happen and that doesn't mean that I failed. And I think that's something that I've made progress on. It doesn't mean that I've failed, that I've done something bad, or that I am now set back so hard from it. It might feel like that at first. It surely does. It's more of just, can I be a little bit more compassionate towards myself? Um, Humbling, right? It's very humbling. It's very eye-opening. It really it puts more things into perspective. Can I see that yes, something that we consider not good, a seizure, has happened, or I'm having this day that's full of auras. I'm not considering that an awesome day in terms of my health, right? But I can see it as not every day has to be totally healthy and good where I don't have one symptom. I can still do, I can still live in that in between area and say, yeah, my health isn't amazing today. I'm restricted in certain ways. I have to relax. I have to focus on my breath work. I have to implement some of these things, but that doesn't mean that it's all bad or it's all negative. It can also mean that there are some beautiful things that have happened in this day. And what are those things? Can I move those into my day? So for me, I like to look at it in parts. And if you've ever heard of like IFS therapy or right, like parts therapy, we have so many parts to us. And I don't want to be preachy on therapy right now, but this is how I attempted that day and why I think it was successful was I looked at myself and I said, two things can be true at once. Honestly, 10 things can be true at once, right? Like I can say, yes, a part of me is frustrated that I'm not doing so hot today. Like that I overdid it, even though during the workout I felt so good and I was back in my power and like all this good stuff. But here I am, and here I am, right? So there's a part of me that's disappointed in that I can't just jump back in there like I would love to. And there's a part of me that is so grateful, like you said, Mike, that I can be in the gym and I can exist in a space that I used to, no matter what the capacity is. There's a part of me that has compassion for the girl that it's kind of like emotional, right? Like there's compassion and love for the girl who's really trying and really like trying to get back in there and do something good for her body and for her mind and to get out of our mind because I know that the gym helps me do that. So there's this compassion and love for that girl too, and I can see that as positive that that's going to keep driving me forward no matter how much I have to take a break or bring my level of intensity down because this girl was intense sometimes. So right there's that compassion and love for her too. And then there might be some anger. Like I'm just speaking to everybody who's listening. There might be some anger with situations. Like I had another seizure or I had another, episode or flare up or whatever it is. There might be anger, and that's a part of you, and that's okay. That is a part. It's a valid part. What other parts are there for you that you can enlist? Like you can bring them in and say, I can also recognize that this girl or this man or whoever you are is also valued, appreciated, beautiful, loving, has potential, like whatever's on your list, radiant, a good friend, a good family member. so many options there for the goodness that you bring so that two things can be true at once and you don't have to be stuck in one thing. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I don't mean to take over this podcast, but something that I brought up for me, and I think it was a really was an interesting question for me to ask myself, interesting question for listeners to ask themselves, and I'll ask you guys, is I tend to have a negative bias versus a positive bias when my in my thought process. So for me, it's really helpful for me to be aware of that negative bias to kind of maybe talk myself out of it or to recognize that there are different parts. And I just tend to go negative first. So for you guys, what's your bias?
Mike, do you want
It's
to
a
start us off?
Yeah, it's a great question, Fred. And I think first it's important to understand the why. Like, why is that the default? And I think the answer or the reason is because it's easier. I think a lot of our life experiences reinforce the negative bias that we have. And I'll speak to myself, right? Like if I had gone to a doctor's appointment and was having symptoms or in a flare up, my negative bias of like things aren't going well or things aren't going in a good direction, 9 times out of 10 was correct, right? Like if I'm having more significant symptoms, that means that there's something more significant going on in my body. And so I think that unfortunate negative reinforcement leads us to having a negative bias towards things. And I don't think that's the case with everything in our life, right? But I think for people with chronic conditions or people that navigate, mental health issues, it holds to be true that the negative experiences that we have, or oftentimes, and we talk about this a lot with people in therapy, their anxiety, their what ifs, their, worries about certain situations oftentimes get reinforced. Or like I had a session with someone that was, so worried about going out in public, just going to the grocery store because he feared that, someone would say something to him or someone would ask him something that he wouldn't be able to answer. And sure enough, he went to the grocery store with me because I take a lot of my guys out into the community. Someone asked him a question and he froze. And so I just helped him through it. I took over, I answered the question. And so in a situation like that, his negative bias held to be true, right? Like he was worried about this situation and it held up, right? And so I think, a lot of the work that we have to do and continue to do is in some parts like accepting, like you were kind of speaking to, Fred, that we do have a negative bias towards things. I think that's one of the first steps in all of this is recognizing that in this situation we have that. Like that is your default reaction to when things come up. That's the first step.
Right.
And then what can we do with that? Right? Okay, cool. I recognize that this is what's going on. This is the negative bias I have towards situations. How can I reframe that mindset? How can I maybe shift the way that I think about this into something positive or take actual action into the opposite? Right. So I think that's just a long-winded answer to your question, but I think holds a lot of truth in a variety of different domains.
This is really interesting because I have a little bit of a different view. And I love this conversation. And Fred, I acknowledge everything you're saying. I think that everybody grows up in a different way. And for the most part, I do believe that parents and the people around us all do the best that they possibly can to raise their children, right? But everybody comes with their own opinion, and there's no perfect way to do it. Um, okay, so Mike, to your point, because I want to build off this, I love it. To your point, I heard this the other day. I don't know how true it is. Okay, someone's gonna have to fact check me on this, but the saying goes, the worrier suffers twice. And that about 90% about what we worry about doesn't actually come true. So it challenges your point with your client a little bit. Although what your client goes through is kind of a common thing, right? Like what that worry was is a higher probability of something happening than maybe someone who's having intrusive thoughts or feel right like these unrealistic thoughts. Does that make sense? So there's a little bit of a difference there. But it does challenge the idea of how much of what I'm consuming on, like in my brain, or how much of what I'm actually spending time and energy on in my brain is actually going to happen or going to be valid in spending that much energy on it. Does that make sense?
100%. And I'd like to respond to that because I think that's
Yes.
very important, right? And I think what you're kind of also getting at is in therapy, we talk about cognitive distortions, right? And so oftentimes a lot of people with anxiety have cognitive distortions, which are essentially unrealistic thoughts or situations that might be happen that aren't true, right? Kind of going against my point. And that's where us as therapists in our practice help our clients identify those cognitive distortions and help them reframe them. So, in a situation like I was in with my client when we were out in the community and he did have that worry, yeah, unfortunately, it held up and was true. We experienced that firsthand. However, if there was a worry, I'm going to be, extreme on this end, but if there was a worry that when you walk into the store, you know, I can't even actually think of a good example right now, but you walk into the store and an alien is going to abduct you,
Yeah.
that's not realistic, right? That's not something that, and I know it's an extreme example, but that's not an instance in which it's going to hold up and it's going to be true. And so I think it can become situationally based, right? And I'll use myself for an example with my own chronic condition, right? If I have myself a chronic condition of, you know, I'm in a flare up right now, and I'll use an extreme example, but, this means that I am not going to be able to live past 50. I don't know, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a very real possibility. I don't know, right? I don't actually know uh, the facts behind it, I guess, of if that would be true. And does it feel good to go to there, like to that extreme thought? No, right? So how can I change my mindset into something that is more positive and just like, all right, I've had 7+ years of this. I know that flare ups only last for a certain amount of time and then I get through it. Is it more likely that I'm going to get through this flare up and be okay on the other side? Yeah, right.
Yes.
So I know those are some extreme examples, but
They're
to
not,
respond
your
to you,
chronic condition one is not at all, Mike. Like I, and to Fred's question, initial question about bias, right? I don't know, like I'll be so transparent. Yes, I had a surgery 2 months ago, almost to the day. And the weeks leading up to it and a couple weeks after it, they were hard, not just physically, but mentally. And I was not in the same energy as I am presently. Because right now I am here, I am present. I'm not thinking or preoccupied with anything else that's going on in my life. So I'm able to be here in my full radiance and full presence, right? Where, when we did our podcast weeks ago, a piece of me in the back of my head is like, dang, I have a surgery in a week. Like, I have to go under the knife. I gotta, like, is it even gonna work? Is it, there's so much that goes with that. So if our listeners, if you're listening and you're like, wow, these two are positive, like, yeah, we are positive beings, of course. Like, I think our bias is when we are here fully. I'll speak for myself. When we're here fully, I have a positive bias. That's me. That's Paige. I really love that. It's also training, though. Like, you don't just get a positive bias naturally, you have to work on it. It's discipline thoughts of, I'm going to choose, like I had kind of mentioned earlier, I'm going to choose to go in the direction of confidence and love and compassion and humility and beauty. Like, I'm going to choose those thoughts. And the thoughts that come in that are intrusive, that are hard, that are in the back of my head because I'm worried or I'm exhausted or whatever else is there. Those thoughts are real, they're valid. I will be the first one to admit that there are seasons of our lives where that is in the forefront. It's there, it's real. So if you're in a season of feeling that and deeply and being caught up in those thoughts deeply, I will encourage you to be gentle with yourself and to reflect on that, talk to someone about that. Um, Talking to someone always helps. And like Mike said, I loved this comment, and I want to reinforce what you had mentioned that what do I know to be true? You mentioned your flare-ups. I know that more than likely I'm going to get through this flare up. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know the intensity necessarily, but I know I'm coming through this. It's going to happen. Can I have faith and trust in that process? That I'm resilient, that my body is resilient, that my mind is resilient, that I have support around me, that I like all of the things, that I'm taking the appropriate actions, that I'm communicating well, that I'm treating my body well, all the things that are necessary. Can I trust that I'm going to get there and that something meaningful is coming from this that's going to help me learn and develop? That's where I think our big mindset can expand. We have room for expansion there and practice. Fred, does that answer your question?
Totally. Yeah. Um, yeah, I was just thinking like preach girl the whole time because yeah, that's what I was looking for. I think what I was getting at initially was the recognition of the base state or whatever you guys would call that in therapy terms for me was extremely helpful to be like, okay, here, it exists, and it's maybe always going to be there and be the baseline, but knowing that it's there can really change perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, Fred's the expectation. Like we as humans love predictability. And so if it's predictable when you're in a situation or in an environment or whatever that you are going to have a negative bias towards something, we like that because we know
Mm,
what to expect. And we know how to control that because now that you have that recognition and that understanding that you have that default, you can then, I know it's easier said than done, but control it in some ways. You can
right.
control if you want to shift that mindset into something different or stay in it a little bit because it's comfortable because that's the default. So little add on to that. Yeah.
Mm.
So for our listeners, Mike, you got to speak to them on that, I think. Just a little
Mm,
bit. What's
sure.
something that they can take from that comment?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, which is hard to do and it takes a lot of work, but is reflection, right? Because if we're not able to reflect on these things, then we don't necessarily know what our bias is or how we react to certain things. So, if you are in a certain situation or environment or season of life, right? Reflect on it. How did I think? How did I feel? What was going on? And then you can kind of look at it and say, oh, wow, I did have a negative thought process or negative bias towards the situation or event, and then really try and figure out like what works for you. Does it help you to reframe it into something more positive? Or does just the simplicity of recognizing that you do have a negative bias towards it help you, like in Fred's case? I don't know, Paige, if you want to add anything to that.
No, it's good. It's good stuff. It's really just like that recognition that you have, Fred, of, hey, I have this negative bias. And Mike, you brought up the fact, this is what stood out to me. You brought up the fact that sometimes we stay in places because it's comfortable. And it might not necessarily be positive or helping us, but it's comfortable. So it helps us in a protective way, a protective factor of, hey, this is comfortable. I want to stay here. I don't want to push because it's going to make me feel uncomfortable. But pushing that narrative, this narrative that we have about ourselves or a situation, challenging that can move us so much further, even though you do have to do the work. Like you said, it's work, but it's ultimately going to push that positivity forward. And again, I don't want to pretend like I'm never stuck in a negative rut or that it never comes to me. I was very transparent a few weeks ago, or I guess a couple months ago. Things are much different. It's much harder to be present for people when you have other things going on in your life. Um, but right now, my full presence is here. And so we need to roll with those seasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. I will say
Wow.
too,
Yeah.
and I know Fred, you were going to jump in here. This is kind of a side tangent, and we can totally take this out, but I'm curious as to how gender roles influence our bias. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Because I do think as men, we have a certain, call it standard, to uphold. You need to be strong. You need to provide. You need to have all the answers. You need to figure this out. You need to problem solve. You need to do those things. And it's a lot of pressure on men. And so I think from when we're little up until infinite age, we have this, I guess, external bias of what a man should be. A man should be the provider. A man should, be the enforcer in the home, right? Be the strict parent, lay down the law, have discipline, right? And traditionally, women are the comfort, they're the,
Nurture.
uh, nurturer. Exactly. Thank you for that. And so I'm curious, and this is for you, Fred or Paige, how that might impact our bias in a variety of different ways of like, you know, am I not good enough as a man because I'm not able to provide? Am I not good enough as a man because I've experienced this or I've gone through that? Am I not good enough, this is for myself, because I have a chronic condition and sometimes I'm at my weakest and I am unable to provide, right? So I'm curious as to your guys' thoughts on this.
I'll definitely jump in, even though I'm the woman. I do feel like when you open it up to gender roles and then not good enough, we identify the woman as the nurturer and the caretaker, right? What if I'm not able to have a child? What if I'm not good enough to be a mom? What if I'm not, what if I don't get enough sleep and like there, so I hear you, Mikey. And there are very real roles and expectations that we can question. My response is that if you asked me 2 months ago, those questions were all over the place. The what ifs, the all of that 2, 3 months ago. What if I'm doing this for nothing? What if I'm getting this surgery and I still can't have a child? What if, I mean, like, you name it, right? What if I can't be a mom? That's my role, isn't it? And now I'm realizing, like today, I'm like, I'm not going to choose that right now. That's not for me to decide. And this is very spiritual on my end, but my timeline and the timing of everything that happens in my life is not up to me. We love control in this world. I'm the first one to tell you I'd love control over my body, um, and everything around me. When I'm able to let that go and let God, it changes everything. Everything. Because I don't have to worry when He decides that I'm going to be a mom, or if He decides, no, you're not going to be a mom. It gives me total freedom to know that what He's giving me, I can handle, and that He's giving me every tool to handle it. So that's what I've been able to let go of recently and let God handle those things for me. I don't have to handle those right now at this moment. I don't need the what ifs to be present. And I'm not saying they won't come. It's just a choice, like I said, like a conscious choice to say, wait, is this in my control right now? And choose the love, the kindness, the compassion, the humility for me to be at peace. That does not discount the roles that are expected in the society. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that those aren't real, because they are. I see it in my own husband as a man and the pressures. It's real. Um, I just think when we're able to kind of surrender some of those things, it allows us the freedom to be whoever we're meant to be and do whatever we're meant to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I look at it as kind of this like bridge to like authenticity, in the sense that when you're able to kind of let go of those roles and those expectations or those learned beliefs or behaviors, you end up ultimately becoming kind of the purest form of yourself. And I think, Paige, the way maybe for someone who's not like as spiritual, the way that, your description was spot on. The way that I say it is everything has to happen for a reason, because if that weren't true, I wouldn't be the person that I am right now. Everything in my life that has led me to be this person, okay, let me rephrase that. Everything that has happened in my life up until this point has led me to this exact moment right here, right now. You know? So it's, for me, it's this idea of the more I can let go of those beliefs or behaviors that don't serve me, the easier that path kind of becomes, and mm, the more authentic I ultimately end up being. When you're not living that authentic version of yourself, you're suffering in a way. So maybe that's a little off topic or something, or tangential, but yeah, I think it's, again, a lot easier to say than to do in society. But I think it's really, again, just something so worth being aware of, um,
Hmm.
and true
What
to
about
all
for
of
you,
us.
Mike?
I think what you both are discussing, which I think is important, and I'm gonna try my best because it in my head makes sense, but the way it comes out might not. But what it sounds like for you, Paige, and for you, Fred, is that all of these experiences, all of these things, you're taking out of your head, out of your control, and putting it into someone else. So for you, Paige, it's I'm leaving it up to God, right? Like I am letting Him, as my creator, as the person that made me, not dictate, but tell me if I'm worthy enough to be a mother and if He's going to place a child in me, right? Like if He's going to give me that opportunity, right? And so in that, I think, and I don't want to speak for you, there's comfort because it's not on us. It's not on Paige. It's not on Michael, your husband. You're taking that and giving it up to God and letting him be the decider, right? And for you, Fred, it sounds like from a non-religious standpoint, every experience, everything that you've been through has led you to where you are right here, right now. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, or if I'm off or in a similar, frame of mind that you're kind of speaking to. But everything that you've experienced, everything that you continue to experience are things that happen that have gotten you to where you are, which then in turn takes the pressure off of you, right? It makes it a little bit easier. It feels like you're able to be a little bit more gentle with yourself and not place any blame for either of you guys. And same thing for me, right? There you can't put any blame on yourself when you put it in God's hands or just kind of recognize that I'm here because of different situations that have happened that have been out of my control. And I think that is an interesting phenomenon, feeling. I don't really know what to kind of label it as, but I think the concept of taking our own decisions, our own feelings out of it and putting it to someone else or something else, fate, God, call it what you want, brings a little bit of comfort because then we're not blaming ourselves. I don't know how that sits with you guys or if that makes sense,
Yeah,
but
I feel like I would take blame out of it
mm,
because I think speaking to being present is just accepting things for as they are and kind of trusting the the future,
process.
the process,
Mm,
it's like I think for me, giving up control, when I try to control how something plays out in my life, I end up in a less authentic state.
mm,
I like the word trust, Fred. That was where my mind went when you were speaking, Mike, is it's all about trust. And I know that when I don't trust, and this is similar to Fred, when I don't trust in God, Jesus, the way that this is going to play out, right? That's the same, almost very similar to you, Fred, right? Where like, okay, now I'm trying to take more control and I don't trust that what is in process is for me. It's happening for me, not to me. So there's this trust of um, that's the word right
Yeah.
there. I would take blame, shame, all those things out
Because
and
we're not
say,
not a victim.
right,
mm.
exactly, exactly. There's no victim in this at all. I agree, Fred. That's huge. It's more about just let me, yeah, I don't even want to add more. That's perfect. Take the blame, the shame, the guilt out, add in trust and the hope of what's to come.
Hmm.
Mm. To add on to all this, it's hard. It's
Hmm.
hard.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly hard to exactly what you guys are talking about, to put trust into those things. And it takes a lot of work, right? You're not going to just tomorrow say, all right, I trust God. He's got
I've been
this.
working on this for way too long, Mike. Just kidding. It's I mean
Hmm.
like to your point, yes. The
Right?
trust it's not overnight. I also am never gonna sit here and tell you that I do that every day consistently well.
Hmm.
I'm human. We're human.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to yeah, I'm
And
not
we and
perfect.
we yeah, we make mistakes.
Hmm.
Ultimately,
Yep.
though, it's the trust in those mistakes. For me, speaking to myself, trust in those mistakes that are going to allow me to learn how to move forward. And I feel that that's the process I'm talking about or speaking to is kind of whatever happens out of my control, in my control. ultimately going to lead me to a higher perspective. And I feel that, chronic conditions, mental health, that's what we're all gunning for, is this higher perspective of how do I get out of this negative bias or negative thought process or intrusive thoughts and just, Paige, like you said, let go and let God in a way. And, I think that speaking to that, let go and let God, for everybody, it's God's not going to hit or resonate. It's this idea of, we're doing the best that we can. All we can do is what you said before, Mike, kind of live and learn, reflect, and move forward with that knowledge and understanding and keep a high vibration. And, you know, when we're in the low vibration, realize that it's not always like this. And for Paige, for you, 2 months, I'm going to be in some of the highest vibrations that I've been in so far. It's
Mm.
the ebbs and flow of life. I think speak to like the journey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. In with that, Fred, we always talk about a page, seasons of life, right?
Mhm.
You always talk about this, that, seasons can look like actual seasons, fall, winter, spring, summer, which is a couple of months. Seasons can also look like a couple of years, right? And so wherever people are at in their journey, wherever our listeners are at in their journey, you're in a season, good, bad, and different. You're in a season. And sometimes in knowing that, there's a little bit of comfort in I could just be in a really bad season right now, but I know because of the world and how the world operates, seasons change. And it's not going to be like this for the rest of our lives, for the rest of, time. We don't know how much time, but it's going to change. And I think that's where a lot of the work that we've done comes into play, because we're able to recognize that, and it helps provide us with some comfort. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah.
It definitely
And
is.
hope.
Yeah, comfort and
Mm,
hope and mhm.
Uh, And hope because if I think about the season that I've been going through for the past, like, I would say year, maybe more. And I feel that I've made a lot of progress through it. Like you guys all, like we all talked about the purpose of that and the surrendering and the reasoning behind it and all of that. I truly believe that if we don't have hope, we don't have much of anything. And this is these are all whole other, like we could do an hour episode on everything we talked about today. This was a jam-packed session. Um, I just hope that the experience I've been through, the season that I went through that was at least a year long, and I'm still not totally out of the woods. Let's be honest. It's still, it still creeps in here and there. There's still uncertainties. There's still stuff here. I'm not completely, I don't know if I'm ever completely in a completely new season, right? Like there's always epilepsy. It's always a part of me. So there's always that part, right? Like I talked about the parts. And so that part is always there. Um, but then there are also these seasons that you're talking about. And just for anybody who's new to us using the terminology seasons, it's more of like, hey, I'm having a season of maybe depression, despair. I'm feeling really down. If you can hear my voice right now, this is new. I'm very hoarse sometimes. This is a new season. I have a new device here that's changing my life a little bit. We have these new, and then you might be in a season where your health is really great and you're feeling like you're making progress and you're feeling all these like new things coming that feel good. And I do feel that I'm moving into more of a season like that through my faith and through learning and trusting, right? Like Mike said, that is going to ebb and flow. It's only natural because life only brings us more stressors in our life and new stressors as we move through life. So whether that's, you know, marriage, family, new health diagnosis, new procedure needed to happen. For our chronic conditions, it's the potential is kind of endless. It's very interesting, right? Where we're dealing with new things a lot. So it's more of how can we keep instead of this roller coaster of I feel so good and so motivated and all this, and then we're so down and so down in the dumps. And then it comes up again and down again. How can we develop this trust and hope that keeps us relatively, and if you can see my hand, if you're listening on a podcast, it might be hard to see, but keeps us relatively in the same frequency where there's might be some ebbs and flows, but they're not dramatic roller coaster ups and downs. Does that make sense, guys?
That's a nice way, yeah, of describing it.
Yeah, so then there's it creates this ability to accept that life is not perfect. Anyone even without a chronic condition, life is not perfect for anyone. Everybody's dealing with something. I think what's unique for us is that we do recognize, hey, we have this condition. Every day we get up and a part of us is thinking about it. And in different stages of our life, we might be thinking about it more, we might be thinking about it less. It might be more prominent here, less prominent there, but it's here. And it might never go anywhere, right? It might always be here. How can I wake up every day trusting and hoping and knowing inside of me that I have purpose, I have worth, I can accomplish things that I want to accomplish. I can respond to myself with love, compassion, humility, kindness, right? I can do those things. Again, it's not overnight, but I can. That's a possibility for me. That's a hope for me in my life. And so, in this stage of my life, bringing more of that in is going to keep what Fred called the frequency, which is this being at a certain level of knowing everything I just talked about to keep us moving forward. And Fred, you can probably expand upon the energy more, but just having that frequency be high and knowing who you are and how you can accomplish through hope and the faith in this life. Things aren't
Yeah,
perfect.
no, you did it perfectly.